artist skill. Please welcome Tony. Forgot to tell you.
Sorry, I forgot my glasses. And I'm not one of those people who can become an actor and just memorize all this, so I have to read. Welcome to the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen pro-democracy movement commemoration, the celebration of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the beginning of freedom in Eastern Europe. First of all, we'd like to welcome Dr. Frank Dabala, Los Angeles County Commissioner, U.S. Army veteran, and member of the American Legion, the nation's largest veterans organization.
Before I give you a friendly reminder about the importance of tomorrow, Monday, May 27th, I'd like to put on my official hat so that you can recognize that I am a member of the American Legion. This is a friendly reminder to you that tomorrow, on Monday, the nation observes Memorial Day. This is an important remembrance of the Americans who put service over self. It is a federal national holiday that was originally established during the Civil War, when the Union and Confederate soldiers were remembered. 600,000 died during that conflict. And since 1941, when America entered into World War II, over 600,000 American men and women gave their lives on behalf of freedom and democracy of this country. So it is an important national holiday that we should remember with gratitude and respect. If you have ever been to a national cemetery and you have seen the thousands and thousands and thousands of marble headstones, each representing a man or woman who gave his life for this country, and all the families that were impacted as a result of those loss, you will see that it is a sobering reminder. So it's a friendly reminder to remember what tomorrow is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dabala, and we are also celebrating with you this Memorial Day. First of all, we would really like to thank you sincerely for being a part of this commemoration and celebration. You are what makes this commemoration live on and what gives hope to the oppressed peoples around the world in places like China today. We would also like to acknowledge some of our guests here today. Amnesty International is here. Would the people representing Amnesty International please stand up? Members of Amnesty International. We would also like to acknowledge the Chinese Democracy Education Foundation. Would you please stand up? Also, Humanitarian China. Would you all please stand up? Los Angeles Chinese Democracy Platform, please stand up. China Democracy Party, let's give them applause, please. Also, Nelson Nguyen and members of the Vietnamese Human Rights Network are here. Please stand up. We also have representation from the Tibetan Association of Southern California. Please stand up. And also we'd like to mention the Hong Kong Forum. Please stand up. We'd like to recognize the honorees and performers ahead of time so you can see who they are. Sylvia Wang, could you stand up please? Excuse my pronunciation. Zhou Fangso, could you please stand up? Charles Sherman. Diana Wong. Ken Aaron. Jeff Whitner. Jura Illo. And Leslie Eloy, please put in, excuse my pronunciation. Let us also not forget to congratulate Beata Pozniak and Sona Vance from Poland, winners of the 2019 Maria Konopnicka International Prize for Literature and Cultural Achievement. At this time, we'd like to invite country specialist for China, representing Amnesty International, James Zimmerman, to speak on the present situation in China.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks to you all for coming again this year. We've been here for many years now, and I have been honored to represent Amnesty International, which has expressed its concern ever since 1989. We call then, as we call now, for the Chinese government to acknowledge what happened in 1989, to have a thorough investigation of all the facts, many of which, for example, how many people were killed and who did that and so on, have not been clarified to this day. So we still need a thorough investigation. Unfortunately, since 1989, and particularly this year, I can't tell you that things have particularly improved. In fact, they may be getting worse. Certainly the situation in Xinjiang, where we believe that between 800,000 and 1 million Uyghurs have been confined in concentration camps or re-education camps, is probably one of the most grave human rights violations in the world today. And again, that's a situation that the Chinese government has refused to acknowledge or give any information about. And Amnesty has publication about it in which the information is based on over 100 people who don't know where their parents or family members are. But that situation also needs to be investigated and something needs to be done about it. We would be here a long time if I tried to tell you all of the human rights violations which are occurring. I just mentioned the name of Wang Changzhang, the lawyer, many others, and we call on the Chinese government to release prisoners of conscience. We are not alone. This year, being the 30th anniversary, quite a bit is going on in Washington. The Uyghur Human Rights Act is making its way through Congress, and members of Congress on June 4th next week, some of them will be, for example, reading some of the manifestos and writings of former prisoners of conscience, like Liu Xiaobo, who died in prison without receiving cancer, and his charter of 2008. So the 30th anniversary of Tiananmen is not passing unnoticed, except, of course, in China. So let's continue our work. There's a lot more to be done, and in the end, I'm confident we will succeed. Thank you.
As always, Jim Zimmerman is very knowledgeable about.
Actually, even see it from the freeway if you are driving along the freeway. So he's going to have an open house, and at that time, and the timing is here. And Visual Artists Guild, you all get this card on your table, each one. And Visual Artists Guild is going to have our 6th Art and Democracy art exhibition on September 7th. The opening is in West Hollywood. So please keep this information, and then we invite everyone to join us for the opening of the art exhibition. It is Art and Democracy 6, and it is our 6th one. And I'd like to also recognize some of our members, our board members of Visual Artists Guild. Like to recognize Lisa Wong. Lisa Wong over there. Can you stand up, Lisa? Guy Grant. Lisa is very shy. Guy Grant. Where are you, Guy? Guy, somewhere. I don't know. He's here, I know. Let's see. Sam Chan. Where's Sam? Over there? Somewhere over there. Okay. She's my daughter. Veronica Raymond. Veronica over there. Later Wu. Later. Later can I come up? Yeah. Over there. And
Awesome, enjoy.
Grace Aaron. Grace Aaron. Fernando Fernando, and his wife, and Rick Velasquez has been doing all our technical things and doing really great.
campaigns to eliminate counter-revolutionary elements and bourgeoisie elements resulted in millions executed or sent to Laogai labor camps. Foreigners, Christians, and clergy were arrested and sentenced to years in prison. Intellectuals were forced to attend months of self-criticism sessions to eliminate any thoughts not in line with the party. By 1957, the government had launched the economic policy of the Great Leap Forward. They restructured the economy according to some communist principles, but the public remained fearful of dissenting honestly, so as not to be labeled class enemies. So when production reports were made, exaggerated reports of production became normal. Years of repression meant few would complain of the failing system. All of this dysfunction and more resulted in the greatest famine in world history. When the famine ended in 1962, an estimated 30 to 42 million people had perished from starvation. That's about the same population of California today. We'd like to have a translation. Okay, I'll continue. Similarly, the Cultural Revolution, which lasted from 1966 to 1976, brought out young people mostly from 14 to 22 years of age called the Red Guards. Okay. They were instruments for Mao to consolidate his power. The Red Guards roamed the cities and villages, attacking anyone who was not red enough. Encouraged by the government and exalted by Mao to view the party as the mother and father, these Red Guards would renounce their parents, denounce their teachers, and anyone with authority. Anyone who they could identify as class enemies. Arbitrary violence by these government's agents was normal and even promoted. The death of Mao in 1976 brought an end to the terror by the masses. After the end of Mao, Deng Xiaoping came into power. Deng suggested that Marxism should be the source of all totalitarianism, was the source of all totalitarianism, and should be discarded in favor of other forms of socialism. As China began opening its markets to the world and investments in China were encouraged, the slogan of "to become rich is glorious" took the place of Mao's sayings. While economic freedoms cropped up in many parts of the country, political and civil liberties were still suppressed. It was in this historical context that in 1989, Beijing erupted with the largest spontaneous demonstrations the People's Republic of China had witnessed in its history. The pro-democracy movement spread to more than 40 cities around China. It began on April 15, 1989, with the death of the former Communist Party leader, Yu Yaoban, who had been ousted from power 2 years earlier. This is their story. Please welcome, excuse my pronunciation, Zhou Fangso, co-founder and current president of Humanitarian China.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here today. 30 years ago, I was a student in Tsinghua University for physics. In the same way, I was looking for social principles that's true across country, nations, and time. And for that, I came to love the idea of freedom and democracy and human rights and rule of law for Chinese people on Chinese ground. So that's why in 1989 I took part of the demonstration, even though later I realized the government saw me as one of the student leaders. For me, I was just acting as out of my own duty as a citizen and a student. When Hu Yaobang died, April 15, we were all very sympathetic because he was considered open-minded reformer. So the next day, I went to Tiananmen Square to offer a wreath of flowers for him. And that was the start of the public protest from campus to Tiananmen Square that caught the attention of the world later. And more people gathered around Tiananmen. The topic quickly changed from Hu Yaobang himself to broader issues. So in the night of April 18, I gave a speech to hundreds of people who were gathered around monument of the people's hero. I compared the Chinese Constitution against Declaration of Independence. I believe that there is no legitimacy in Chinese Constitution because it insisted on people just following the party. It's not based on people's consent. But I was pushed away by other students because it was considered too radical. But I was thrilled because I was able to speak up from my heart for what I believe in. So more and more students gathered around Tiananmen, and a formal petition was formed. So we asked the government to have a dialogue with us on the important issues that we are concerned with. So there was a petition of 7 demands. The two most important ones are press freedom and the disclosure of the asset of government officials as a way to fight corruption. So these demands were very reasonable and they were widely supported by people all over China, even within the Communist Party. So at Hu Yaobang's memorial, about 100,000 students gathered to show our support for Hu Yaobang and to demonstrate our will for change. That was, to me, the most important moment in my life to realize that there were so many students who were thinking about the same thing. We shared this idea, and we were no different from other people. We love freedom, and we are willing to fight for it. But the government responded with crackdown immediately. So in the editorial for April 26, that was Deng Xiaoping's opinion. They basically said this was a conspiracy against the government. And Deng, in his speech, said he is not going to stop if he has to use force to kill. So the next day, as a student leader, I was very hesitant what to do. And we actually disbanded our organization because of the risk of a military crackdown. But the students were so angry by the government's response. The next day, they all poured out to the street. And of course, I was at the forefront because I had to be there when we were doing the right thing for the country. And this was the first time that the citizens of Beijing began to show their support. So when we were facing the police, the people, the ordinary citizens of Beijing would show up from behind the police. So the police were just powerless against Beijing people. So that day began in fear, but it ended in triumph for the people. It was like a celebration when the day ended. Even though there were police, there were military presence, they had to withdraw. So a lot of people call that day, April 27th, the victory of the people of Beijing. So after our demand for a direct dialogue was denied for a long time, a lot of students went to Tiananmen Square again for hunger strike starting May 13. About 2,000 students went on hunger strike. I was there to organize the network that provide medical and other support to keep the people on Tiananmen safe and also keep the protests in an orderly fashion. But in reality, we were just trying to follow the people's opinion. Most of this was done spontaneously. So, for example, we have a lifeline on Tiananmen to support the students. So there will be an ambulance. Among almost a million people in the square, it was busy, hectic. But at the same time, the ambulance will have to pass by every 5 minutes. But there was never a traffic accident. Because this hope for a better China was unifying everyone. And because there were so many journalists, like Mr. Jeff Wagner there. So the world was witnessing it, and we could feel the support from all over the world, from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from United States. But then the government reacted with stronger threat. So they declared martial law. It was completely unreasonable, uncalled for. So when the troops show up, it was actually before it was formally declared in the evening of May 19. Beijing people blocked them with their bodies, so they would lay on the streets when the armed vehicles was pushing in. So when I heard that, I just realized the troops were coming in. This was before they declared martial law formally. So that's how the troops were stopped. Altogether, we used more than 200,000 troops to invade Beijing, its own capital. But in the beginning, they were stopped by people, who just willing to do everything. They would give the soldier drinks. They would carry their kids on their shoulder just to tell them the story. This is Beijing, people's Beijing. It was peaceful. It was the most peaceful period in Beijing. Even the police who was there, 5 years earlier, when I went back to Beijing to protest, I was arrested, but the police told me, they were there 30 years ago, in 1989, they were there. It was the most peaceful time in Beijing. They all agreed. Why? Because people see a hope for China. But in the evening of June 3rd, things changed. I was actually planning for a vacation because I was exhausted just for all the work, and I want to take a different perspective. So I was planning for a short trip outside of Beijing. But in the morning, I heard from the radio that there was a truck of weapons delivered to the students. Just somehow the students were possessing such a truck of weapons. And so the students returned the weapons to the police. But I realized this is the signal that they are going to kill, because if we have weapons, then even if they were given to us, then they have the reason to use weapons against us. So then I went back to Tiananmen Square. So when I arrived, it was about 4 p.m. I could smell tear gas in the air. This was the first time I realized things are getting tense. So I stayed all night on the People's Monument, which I believe will be the most dangerous place. And that's where things started when I first made my speech too. But it turned out it was like the eye of the storm. We were there, we were protected by the courageous people of Beijing who fought with just their hands, their body, in front of the tanks. And the troops were using machine guns to kill. So all night, we heard gunshots from all directions, and I saw flares going up in the sky. It was unbelievable. So in the morning, there was a vote whether to stay, and we want to decide that by the loudness of the voice, because that's the only way to vote there. I said no, we want to stay, because so many people have died. We knew at that time people have died. We have to stay. But then the Feng Zongde, the other student leader, said, the withdraw voice was stronger. So he announced that we should withdraw. And then the troops immediately around us, pushing us down. So I was beaten. And the tanks were about just 10 feet from me when we were leaving Tiananmen Square. So the daylight was breaking. As I was leaving, I could see smoke coming out from Tiananmen Square, and the goddess of democracy, which was erected a few days ago, was completely crushed. It was heartbroken, and many were crying. I just said, we will come back. We have to. So that's, to me, that was the beginning of my journey for the last 30 years. And later, I passed by this hospital on Chang'an Street, so the main avenue leading up to Tiananmen Square. And I saw 40 people, 40 died bodies in a bicycle shed outside of Fuxing Hospital. So one of them was Zhongqing. I remember his name since then. And we were able to contact his family, but even today, they are afraid to speak up. That's what keeps me going. We are here for Zhongqing, for these people who died for us. We are here to speak for them, for these families who can't even today speak for these who died. So later, 10 days later, while I was having a meal with my family in my hometown, I saw my name on the most wanted list broadcasted on national TV, and I was number 5. I was shocked because I never believed I was so important. I was just a common student. But at the same time, I feel a very profound sense of pride because it was such a tremendous movement, and I was honored to be part of it and to be officially designated as a student leader. So I was arrested and spent a year in prison. For me, that was the starting of a long journey for the last 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Now we'd like to welcome Jeff Wigner to speak.
Sorry guys, but I got some kind of weird thing. It's very symbolic because I had the same thing when I was covering the Tank Man. The whole time I was there, I was bombarded with some kind of flu thing in my nose, and so it's very appropriate for this occasion. I live in Hamburg, Germany, and I'm sort of semi-retired. I have an agency I work with, and occasionally I do stories. And a lot of times I'll get invitations to do events, and I've gotten kind of used to this. But this is different because, I thought, okay, I'll do this on the way to Hawaii. I got some time. I'll try to plan it. And Lao's been very nice to invite me to this. But this has been incredible. I'm getting people coming up to me that were at the same place I was at the same time. One guy came up to me, and I'm sorry, I got to get your name again. But he's in one of my pictures. And I said, that's a man, the goddess of democracy, And that blew my mind. So to meet some of you guys, it's really an honor. And I don't have a lot of time because Ann is giving me a 15-minute limit here. So I'm just going to go through some of these pictures and explain what I want. Sorry. Well, then we're going to be here a while, Ann. Okay. Okay. You want to go ahead? Go ahead, please. Okay, now I start. Okay. So anyway, this first picture is a very young me with Lu Xing, who was our New Delhi-based photographer, and it was taken a few days before the crackdown on June 4th.
这个照片上的我非常年轻，那时候我是在新德里工作。这个照片呢拍在就是那个事情的发生的几天之前。
This picture, I was packing some weight back then, about 20 pounds heavier, so you can imagine what it was like me getting up on this bus to shoot these crowds of people. In fact, all these protesters, many of them were pushing me up on my butt, pushing me up on the top of this bus to get this photograph. But what had happened is a lot of these students had been confiscating, grabbing AK-47 assault rifles, and they had returned them, I guess, to some of the police and soldiers. But they also built this monument on top of this bus, and this was near the Great Hall of the People, and I photographed this. Okay. Next. So this is in Tiananmen Square, and there was a time when things got a bit boring. Other times it was quite amazing. It was like a carnival atmosphere. For me and a lot of other journalists, it was hard not to get involved in this story. It was like something different was in the air. It was an amazing situation where how is it possible that democracy could be blooming here in a communist country? You have the goddess of democracy facing off directly across from the giant Mao portrait on the Forbidden City. And I would look at this contrast, and this was unbelievable. I think the whole world was captured in this. Go next. Okay. I just found this recently. I lost it.
最近也看到这个东西。对，we said simultaneously. Simultaneously.
Okay. I just found this photo
我最
recently.
近才发现这张照片的。
And so anyway, I just found it recently, and I think it was just one moment when it was kind of quiet with all the tents. Everybody was sleeping there. It was well organized. They had lines, food lines. There were sanitary trucks going around. They had mechanical run printing presses. And it was just an amazing experience for me personally. Next. This is a recent one also. And, you know, I had to go up every morning about 6 a.m. because there was a little competitive thing with Lou and me. I would get up at 6, and I wanted to get back filing pictures by the time he was having his breakfast. So we had this little friendly, you know, competition going on. Next. So when I got up in the morning, I would see this every day. And it was just amazing. It was so symbolic about what change was happening in China. There's a new dawn. Next. I don't know if these are hunger strikers, but this was basically the situation all over the square. There were a lot of people just sitting around. There were hunger strikers as well. A lot of the, sometimes it would get really tense between the military and the police and the protesters. And to calm things down, sometimes you would get a situation where some of the folks, like the police, would do sing-alongs. Next. This is where, another situation where I got on the top of a bus, and this was near the Great Hall of the People. Next. On June 3rd, things started getting charged up. And I got up kind of high, I don't know where, I think it was a Hail Mary. I held the camera with my head like this. And I had an 18mm lens, which was really great because you're in tight and there's so many people around you, you needed a really wide lens. And right after I took this picture, all these soldiers started shouting at me and they were pointing at me. And some of the protesters actually tried to look like push back the soldiers from attacking me. So I just said, okay. So I got down off of whatever I was, or whatever, just pulled the camera down, and I pulled back, and then this woman got in a scuffle. It was after this scuffle that they told me to stop. And this was the first picture that I saw of any kind of conflict that was moved to the world on the AP photos, our distribution network. Next. And this guy, he's trying desperately to get his camera. There was a lot of suspicion with some of the media because nobody really knew who was working for the government, who was trying to photograph the protesters. And and this guy's probably Chinese, of course, so he's automatically a suspect. That wouldn't be for me, usually with me they left me alone. Next. So here's one of these policewomen, just trying to do a sing-along and keep things, quiet, relaxed, because can you imagine if you're a policewoman or a soldier in the middle of thousands of people and all of a sudden you tick them off somehow? It's not going to go well. So everybody wanted to keep things really calm. Next. I'll go briefly into the night of June 4th. This might be a little mixed up now out of sequence. But these guys were going around the city after June 4th, and they were shooting people just randomly. And let's go to the next one. This was... are these out of sequence by chance?
Same order.
You sure?
I think so.
Okay. So this was the night of June 4th, and I was with another reporter named Dan Beers. He was an AP reporter, and we only had three photographers, Lou Unschink, me, and Mark Avery, who was the photo editor. Because my Tokyo photo editor had been there for Gorbachev and the talks, and he had been there a long time, and he said he wanted to get back to his wife in Tokyo. And so he picked the wrong day to go, because the next day, there all hell broke loose, and there were only three of us. So I got the short straw, and I'm riding my bicycle with Dan. I told Dan I got a bad feeling about tonight, and he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know, I just don't have a good feeling, I've got this kind of sixth sense about things, I always had it." And sure enough, I noticed people kind of quietly just on tiptoes taking steel bars, from the sides of the roads and putting them in the middle of the street to block any advance of soldiers, And all of a sudden, this old man with a long beard, looked like he was about 90 years old and 2 teeth. He's going, he's all excited, like, what does this guy want? And he has a heavy jacket, and he opens it up, and it's a big hatchet with blood dripping down it. And I remember it gleaming into those lights on the Chang'an Boulevard. And I just looked at this, and I was like shocked, and he's showing it to me like a proud fish, trophy. Okay, yeah, nice, great, getting out of here. And I told Dan, I said, I think the tempo has changed, man, because this guy just came up with a hatchet with blood. And we went further down the street and kind of came off the Chang'an Boulevard next to the Great Hall of the People. All of a sudden, an armored car comes ripping around the corner so fast that sparks are flying off, and I freaked out because they got front machine guns. And I went running off to the left, dropped the bicycle. Dan ran off to the right, and I never saw him again the rest of the day, the night. And I hit some hiving, and I was shaking. And I didn't know at the time, but I lost one of my lenses. I only had a couple of lenses, and I had one camera body, and just a few rolls of film because I wanted to play it low-key. I didn't want to look like a journalist. So once it started going down towards off the Chang'an Boulevard, the only thing I wanted to do was run like hell and get out of there. And then I'm going like this way, and my body's being pulled this way. It's like I cannot believe I'm following these guys. And I start following them, and I was shaking the whole time, and I was trying to get pictures, and this is where I got them. And I shot a lot of photographs with my flash. I had a Vivitar 283, plastic kind of flash. And I got this, and then I noticed I'm running out of battery power, and I'm running out of film. And you got this situation where, okay, do I stay and get a few more shots, or do I possibly miss everything and go back and try to get more film? So I made the decision to start heading back, but on the way back, I run into this burning armored car, and it's coming towards me kind of lurching, and they're shoving steel pipes into the protesters. And I'm looking for this lens, and it's not there. And I'm thinking, oh, I lost it in the ivy. So all I have is a wide-angle lens, a 24 millimeter. And so literally, I have to get so close, I'm part of the story. I mean, these are possibly exploding vehicles. And I can't get back with a longer lens. So I'm literally standing next to this guy with this burning thing. People are on the other side throwing rocks. And I am just totally petrified. And I'm looking down at my camera, and there's a little red light. You got to wait for it to come on so you can take a picture. So I'm saying, okay, come on. Click, come on. 60 seconds for a recharge. Can you imagine all these people going around? There's a dead soldier on the ground. Another guy cuts on fire. He's rolling around on the ground. And I'm saying, I can't take a picture. I'm freaking, come on. I take that light. Boom, man. Just like, whoa. And I look down. Blood's all over me. The whole top of my camera's ripped off. And I was just like whacked out, and it's spinning around like Bugs Bunny. And then the back door of the armored car the door opens up, and the soldier comes out to surrender. And I can still remember the pristine pressed uniform he had, and the mob just kind of moved in on him. And I thought two things. I'm going to lose the Pulitzer Prize because of the look of that face on his expression. And then I thought I should be ashamed for thinking that because this guy's probably going to die. And then I started asking people for a flash. You got a flash? First of all, I had no camera to put it on. And second of all, I'm sure they don't understand me. So that's how whacked I was. And then finally I said, I got to get out of here. But just go back just a little bit. Before this situation happened, I started getting attacked by the mob. They were pulling on my camera. They were pulling on everything. I was getting strangled. And I really thought I was going to die. And I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out my American passport. And I said, American. And some guy came up to me, like an older guy, long brown hair and another heavy jacket. And he was smoking a cigarette, I think, and he just calmed everybody down. And then he came up to me, he looks at it, goes through the pages. You photo. And he takes me over to this dead soldier next. I don't know where there he is. This is another rare one I just found on the internet that I took. And I think it ran in Newsweek. So this guy is got a steel spike over him. He's dead. Now, I don't know how to tell them that I can't take another picture. And they're telling me, take photo. And they're getting angry at me because I'm not taking more photos. But I don't know how to tell them they've only got limited flash. So anyway, I crawled through the legs of these guys because they got in a little bit of a fight themselves. Next. I managed to get back to the AP office, and Mark Avery was there, and he said, don't go back out to killing people. And I basically said, no shit, And so he had to take my camera, smash camera, and go into the dark room, and he had to pry the film open. in the dark to get that film out. Fortunately, it was a Nikon F3 Titanium. It was a very special camera for professionals out of Japan. It was built like a tank. If it had been any other camera, like a plastic Canon or something, I would be dead. It would have driven the plastic probably into my skull. But it absorbed the blow, and it saved my life. So he told me, listen, Jeff, go back to the room and just take it easy. Just take it easy. And so I went back to the room at the Jinhua. It seemed like an eternity to get back there because they'd already shot out the plate glass window in the restaurant at the Jinhua Hotel. I go to my room, and I ordered room service. I ordered a cheeseburger and fries, turned on the TV, and there's CNN. And they got flames coming down the street. And I'm just thinking to myself, something's not right here. I mean, I'm a journalist and the biggest story, but I got to tell you guys, I was sick as a dog. I was scared to death. I've been injured. And, you know, when I sat in that AP office, I had to make a decision. Do I get on the camera? Do I get more film? Do I go back out? I couldn't do it. I was too scared. And I felt like a coward. I mean, I really felt like a coward because, you know, I am driven as a photographer, and I know that if I'd gone back out, I would have been at the front line and I probably would have been killed. I knew it. I knew I would be there. I had to. In fact, I walked in front of that burning armored car. I walked right in front of it and took a picture because I had no other way to really do it. And I knew there was a chance I might get killed because they thought it was flashes from gunfire from these rifles that they'd been taking. So I had no idea what was going to happen. But anyway, the next morning I had to come back out, and the AP office said, we need fresh pictures. And I remember taking a bicycle. I walked out the front door. All these protesters were riding bicycles around. And then they showed me this photograph. And I got it tight, and I shot it, and I went back and I filed it, and it got run worldwide. It's the fastest photo I ever took. And the only reason I did it so fast is I was too scared to be on the street. I mean, I'm going through post-traumatic stress big time. I am terrified. And so to top things off, as that wasn't bad enough, AP sends a message, and it says, we don't want to take any unnecessary risk. But if somebody would please photograph the occupied Tiananmen Square, we'd appreciate it. So that's me. You know, so now, I mean, I'm the guy who's already shell-shocked. I've already been injured. And Lou says, well, the Chinese are going to kill me. And Mark said, well, I'm a photo editor. I got to stay here. So again, you know, I got to go. I'm probably the biggest chicken out there. So I could ride a bicycle about 2 miles to the Beijing Hotel, which has the closest vantage point to Tiananmen Square. Now, rumors had it that they had guys in white uniforms, you know, the secret police that were shocking journalists for not giving up their cameras and notebooks. So now I'm worried about being shot because I can hear gunfire in the alleyways, you know, sporadic gunfire. I see smashed bicycles and bloodstains on these roads. And now I've got to get past an overpass with 4 tanks, with guys with heavy caliber machine guns pointing in all directions. And I'm just riding this bicycle thing. I can't believe I'm doing this, you know. I cannot believe I'm doing this. And I get to the hotel, and there's 5 or 6 of these secret police guys with their white overalls, and I'm going to walk past them, and I've hidden all my camera gear in my pockets. My film's hidden in my underwear. And I'm going there expecting to get arrested, and I see some foreigner, a kid, in the shadows of the lobby. And it turned out to be Kirk Martson, who was an American exchange student who was in a room with his teacher. And I walked up to him like I knew him, and I said, hey, Joe, can you let me into your room? And he goes, yeah, come on. I said, from Associated Press. And then he said, all right. So we went up together, and he said, you're lucky you got here when you did, because about 10 minutes ago, a truckload of soldiers just shot a bunch of tourists in the lobby. They pulled their bodies back in. So I get up to the room, and the first thing I do is just collapse in the bed. I'm exhausted, you know. And occasionally I would get up to the window. Let's go, next one. Sure, what I got. Here we go. I accomplished my mission of getting to the square, but it wasn't easy. Kirk actually helped me get to the roof because we were stopped at least 2 times. And we went down to a lower floor and came back up again, and I used a 400mm lens with a teleconverter. And so basically, you may not know what all this means, but I had a very skinny long telephoto lens and a little teeny lens that would make it double the focal length. So I had a massive amount of power with this lens to pull it in. I don't think I've seen another shot like this to the occupied Tiananmen Square. I mean, if you know of it, let me know. But I don't think there's another quite, because the lens was so long. But anyway, I accomplished my goal, but I ran out of film again. And I told Kirk, can you get me some fresh film? I can't go out. And he said, okay, I'll see what I can do. An hour later, he comes back with one roll of film. One roll of Fuji 100. Now, normally back then, I was shooting Fuji 800. That's a faster, more sensitive. So I put it in my camera, which is a Nikon FE2. It's an automatic exposure camera. Put the film in, forget about it. It takes care of your exposure. Well, I hear tanks coming down the street, and I get out of bed, and I'm leaning over the balcony, and, you know, I'm always reminded of this bullet hole that's above our window next to the room. And as I'm leaning over, I got this nice compression shot, because I'm, you know, very artistic. I like things that are kind of geometrical, and I like, you know. And I'm thinking, this is a nice shot, and this guy walks out with these bags. This guy's going to screw up my photo. And then Kirk says, they're going to kill him, they're going to kill him. And I'm just waiting, like, but you know, after everything I had seen the previous night, it didn't seem out of the ordinary. It just seemed like normal business. And so I'm just waiting, because obviously they're going to kill him. I'm just waiting for them to shoot him. And I'm focusing and waiting and waiting. And I'm thinking, man, this shot's far away. And I'm looking back at the bed where that teleconverter was, because I'm only shooting a 400. Do I gamble it? I lose the whole picture. So I'm a gambler. So I went for it and got the teleconverter, put it on. But that time that I was there putting that on, he had crawled up on the tank. And there was gunfire going on, which I would have known at the time, but I'd forgotten about. And the Time magazine, they did a video on me a few years ago, and when I heard that gunfire, I said, I cannot believe that I was actually leaning over that balcony. My whole body was exposed, pointing around a wall. So anyway, I take 1, 2, 3 pictures, and I noticed the meter. It was one of those long meters. It wasn't digital. It was a 30th of a second. You know anything about photography? An 800 millimeter, a 30th of a second does not work. And I had looked at the light with my eyes, and I said, I know light. And at 800 ISO, that's 250 to f11, I can handle that. But I can't handle 30th. So there's been a lot of reports that stated I screwed up the exposure, I did something wrong. Exposure was perfect. The only thing that went wrong was I forgot it was a lower ISO film. And by the time I forgot, figured out what was going on, some people on the side of the road came and swept them away. So I sat down in the chair, and Kirk said, did you get the photo? I said, I don't think so. Are you sure? Did you get it? I said, I don't think so. But in the back of my mind, I thought maybe one shot came out next. So, yeah, okay, where are we going?
Go ahead.
Is that one okay?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, can you go back to the other ones? Okay, I find this rather comical. This is the aftermath of sweeping it up. So anyway, I had overnighted in the Beijing hotel, and the next morning, but before I did, I called the office, and AP said, Jeff, what shutter speed do you shoot? I said, oh no, I lost the photo. And he said, well, it was okay, we ran it. This is Lou. Well, we ran it, but it wasn't very sharp. And then it ran. I went back to the office the next morning, and Lou came up to me again. He goes, oh, Jeff, you got some very bad messages from New York. I said, well, now what's wrong? I was always worried about screwing up because I wasn't that experienced with AP at the time. And I looked at the message board, and it was unbelievable. It was message congratulations from around the world. President of AP, New Style London, AP Photos said, all front page UK papers, Liberation newspaper in France wanted, Life magazine wanted, 2-page spread, Time magazine wanted on the cover. It was like amazing. And so there it is. And then quickly I'll go through how it looked, how the news used it. Go ahead, next. So, next. 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 Now, there was a very interesting story that happened on the 20th anniversary, which I'll just tell quickly. When I went back and the BBC interviewed me, it was like a secret documentary. When I was walking down the Chang'an Boulevard, a lot of people asked me in the media, how has this changed your life? Well, I'll tell you how it changed my life. Next. I met this young girl. She was sitting on the Chang'an Boulevard smoking a little cigar. And I said, oh, it's interesting to see a woman smoking a cigar. And she says, it's not a cigar, it's a cigarette. And I said, no, it's a cigar. And she goes, no, it's a cigarette. I said, no, it's a cigar. And we had our first argument. And so I asked her if she'd like to go to lunch. And I said, hey, remember that famous Tank Man photo? I'm the guy. And so she went to lunch with me. And the next thing I know, I was married in Honolulu the following year. So we've been married 9 years. I live in Germany, in Hamburg. And she was just with me in New York about a week ago. And now she's back teaching. think that's the last one.
That's it.
Okay, so that's it, guys. I mean, I hope I didn't keep you too long, but I mean, I just kind of shoved it all in there as fast as I could.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Right now, we'd like to welcome Sylvia St. James. She will perform The Comet's Cry.
First of all, let me say, it is an extremely humbling experience to be welcomed here to share this day and to honor the sacrifice of so many young lives, and particularly on a time when we are remembering the heroes of our land as well. But this particular incident struck such a chord in my heart because it was like innocence was being slain. And my friend, 30 years ago, asked me if I could write a piece in honor of their sacrifice. And 30 years ago, the words came. And then later, and so we did it at the very first protest, The Comet's Cry. Because I believe all life is sacred life. It is given to us by a great creator. And the Lord I serve says, greater love hath no man than he lay down his life for his friends. And so they laid down their lives that day for all of us. So can we just give them an applause for their courage? Oh, oh, oh. Across a Beijing sky, and a light went out in a young, innocent eye. That night I heard the comet cry. They seem to say before we go, we want the whole world to know that we were good and we were true and we gave our life to you and we gave our life for so many men to use. And we stood for the right, just like the beacon in the dead of night. That night I heard the comet cry. The heavens cried, oh, blessed souls, you are heroes that can never die. In the stillness, I feel you watching me from a window up in the sky. And you lift the torch of liberty, and it's burning up on high. And still today, we really wonder. We can hear the heavens cry. night I heard the comet cry. So when I remember you, I remember life. I remember innocence, sacrifice. I remember laughter and grief and pain and unrighteous silence that still remains. June 4th, we heard the comets cry. God bless you.
Thank you so very much, Sylvia. Great performance. I'd like to welcome Ann Lau, Chair of Visual Artists Guild, to the podium.
Can we now have a moment of silence to remember those who died? Years have passed. A new generation had grown up and matured. Still, we remember. We remember those who passed away and sacrificed their lives. We remember those who disappeared. And we remember those who was forced into exile.
30年过去了，新的一代已长大成人，我们仍然记得那些逝去的人们，我们记得那些失踪的人们，我们记得那些被迫流亡海外的人们。
For a short, shining moment, in the spring of 1989, the people in China, inspired by the students, suddenly found themselves speaking the truth, expressing their own China dream. It was then that they gave each other a precious gift, a gift of freedom, the freedom from fear. May we continue to share that gift.
1989年春天，在那个短暂的光辉时刻，中国的老百姓们受到学生们的鼓舞，说出了内心深处的想法，追寻他们自己的中国梦，是他们给了彼此最珍贵的礼物。这是一份摆脱恐惧的自由的礼物，让我们继续分享这份礼物吧。
Thank you.
Thanks again, Ann. I'd like to re-welcome Zhou Fangso, humanitarian in China.
Thank you. This is first on humanitarian China. We are humbled and honored. We have been partnered with Visual Arts Guild for a long time, and we have supported the heroes that we all respect and support for years. So Humanitarian China was founded in 2007 by a group of participants of the Tiananmen movement, both in China and outside China. So one founder was from Tokyo, the other one was from the United States, and me from Tiananmen. And most of our supporters are from that generation, and so what happened 30 years ago, we are still trying to carry on the torch from Tiananmen, and that's why for all these years, we have supported the Tiananmen mothers and all the political prisoners of China. And thanks to this great country, we are able to provide for a sanctuary for some of them, including many who are here, so they can here be free and give testimony to China's struggle for freedom and democracy. Every year we give support to over 100 families in China, and the need is growing dramatically since Xi Jinping took over, and that is also our biggest motivation, just to keep working on. And also in California, in both San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles, Southern California, we find our strengths in the local community. And some of our friends are here today with us. We thank you for all you have done over these years with us, making it possible. So in the last 30 years, Chinese people has never given up on the fight. So, for example, my friend Zhao Changqing, here, we were on Tiananmen Square at the same time, and we were later in Qincheng prison. It's friends in the prison, although we never met each other. And he was arrested 4 more times after 1989, altogether spent more than 10 years in prison. He just came to the United States to reunite with his family, his wife and kids in San Francisco Bay Area last December. And it's people like him that we feel the connection to China, and it's through these people, and like him and also Fang Zheng. That we are keeping this dream for China's democratization alive here. So Fang Zheng was leaving Tiananmen Square with a group of students when the tanks charged towards the crowd from behind. And at that moment, the tank first sent out poisonous gas, and there was a student, a woman student with Fang Zheng, and she fainted because of the poisonous gas. And Fang Zheng was holding her while he saw the tanks charging at them. So at that moment, he made the most important decision in his life. He pushed that woman away from the harm of the tank, and he was crushed. He lost both of his legs. If that is heroic for that time, he is still suffering from that injury. Even now, when the weather changes, he will be in excruciating pain. And just recently, he discovered the liver problem he had dated back to 30 years ago because of the blood transfusion in the hospital 30 years ago. But for last 30 years, he has been a strong voice, even though the government always trying to force him to change, to comply. So that's why in China it's so difficult now. Even the victims of the massacre, they are silenced completely. It's really difficult for us. That's why it's so important to have a sanctuary here in the United States, so that the truth can be kept through people like Fang Zheng and Zhao Changqing. Changqing讲几句。
非常高兴能够参加呢今天这一次盛会。在这里，我首先代表891代，向长期关心和支持中国民主人权事业、关心中国社会进步的美国视觉艺术家协会以及美国的朋友们表示衷心的感谢。今天呢，美国视觉艺术家协会要表彰在美国的一个著名的 NGO 组织人道中国。那么呢，人道中国，我认为配得这个奖项。在2007年，人道中国成立至今，那么呢，围绕着和国内的人权抗争者和国内的891代民主维权人士同在同行，做了大量的工作比如说拿我自己的这个为例首先呢这个帮助我的家庭我的妻子和孩子呢是2016年是到美国来的，然后呢人道中国呢为我们家庭呢开展了这个专项的募款除此之外呢，人道中国的前任主席葛群先生呢还把他的家庭这个房子腾出来供我的妻子和孩子这样一个免费居住。而且人道中国呢还帮助了包括这个大陆的著名记者高瑜包括是这个很多的其他的这个民主维权人士、维权律师、民主党人来克服很多困难。在这里呢，我也向人道中国和 他的现任主席周永所先生呢表示感谢。那么呢，中国的大陆的政治气候正在向更恶劣的方向发展，8、9一代还在继续努力。我希望美国艺术家协会，亲爱的美国的朋友们，来继续支持人道中国，支持如人道中国这一类组织，使得我们成为人类苦难共同体、人类进步共同体、民主自由和良心的共同体。谢谢你们。
So I'll just quickly translate, so we are running out of time. When his wife came here to San Francisco Bay Area, she was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and she brought with her 3-year-old son. So it was lots of effort for us to help them, but thanks to the community support and our colleague George, the baby was born smoothly. Now, their family they could live together and live by their own work. So just after 3 years, and this is a testimony to this great country. We are really grateful.
Thank you very much for that. Right now we'd like to welcome Tenzing Chongden of the Tibetan Association of Southern California.
Distinguished guests, friends and members of the Visual Artists Guild and all our honorees tonight, especially Joe Bosho, as well as the other participants of the Tiananmen Square Massacre, and Jeff Widener. It's indeed an honor to be here with all of you. On behalf of the Tibetan Association of Southern California, I would like to thank Chair Ann Lau and Visual Artists Guild for inviting us to participate in the Spirit of Freedom event. My colleague Namje Kirula is there. My colleagues and I are happy to join all of you today to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre and the celebration of the fall of the Berlin Wall and freedom for Eastern Europe. We admire Ann Lau and Visual Artists Guild members for your dedication in honoring individuals and organizations working for human rights in China for many years. We are humbled with your recognition of the Tibetan Association of Southern California for raising awareness of the plight of the Tibetan people here locally. We appreciate your support for the Tibetan people. Unfortunately, the situation inside Tibet remains grim. 6 million Tibetan people inside Tibet continue to be denied basic human rights and freedoms. Over 1 million Tibetans have died as a result of the occupation and invasion in 1950, where many have died of torture, executions, suicide, and starvation. Tibetans continue to be marginalized, with Tibetan culture and religious freedom severely restricted. Forced assimilation continues, with Tibetans becoming minorities in many areas. Thousands of political prisoners languish in prisons for simply expressing their desire for freedom, support for the Dalai Lama, and for criticizing restrictive policies. Just recently, Human Rights Watch urged the PRC government to, quote, immediately release Tibetan monks and others peaceful critics arbitrarily imprisoned since March 2008 protests across the Tibetan plateau, end quote. The Human Rights Watch report listed more than 80 Tibetans who have been incriminated and sentenced to long-term imprisonment by the Chinese authorities. Sophie Richardson of the China Director for Human Rights said, quote, Tibetans who did nothing more than call peacefully for their human rights to be respected have been unjustly sentenced to long prison terms, end quote. Among the 80 Tibetan political prisoners listed, majority were arrested and sentenced in connection with the 2008 Pan-Tibet peaceful protest, while 10 others were sentenced in connection to Tibetan self-immolation protests. The list of cases include human rights defenders, prominent environmentalists, religious figures, and professionals, amongst others, with an average sentence term of roughly 13 years, excluding 15 life sentences and 7 death sentences, for trumped-up charges, including, quote, endangering state security, separatism, leaking state secrets. Unfortunately, the PRC government's policies have failed to address the issue of Tibet, despite His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration calling for only genuine autonomy for all Tibetans in the 3 traditional provinces of Tibet for many decades. Due to the ongoing repressive policies, over 153 Tibetans have self-immolated in protest since 2009, calling for Tibetan freedom and the return of the Dalai Lama to Tibet. I believe it is time for the leadership of the People's Republic of China to trust His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people to resolve the issue of Tibet peacefully without preconditions. His Holiness has convinced majority of Tibetans to support his proposal for the mutually beneficial middle way approach, which is not seeking independence or separation from China. I call on President Xi Jinping to meet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's representatives to resolve the issue of Tibet through dialogue and negotiations. China's leaders must respect the wishes of the Tibetan people for basic rights and freedoms and the preservation of their Tibetan way of life, religion, and culture. Failure to do so will only increase the resentment among the Tibetan people instead of winning their hearts and minds. I also call on the PRC leaders to respect the wishes of the Uyghur people and, of course, the Chinese people for greater freedoms, democracy, and human rights, and release all political prisoners. Finally, I express my solidarity and appreciation with all of you for your support for human rights and democracy in China. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'd like to welcome Jory Ilum, daughter of Ilum Tosi.
Hello everyone. My name is Johar Ilham, and I'm grateful to the Visual Artists Guild for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all about the suppression of dissent in the People's Republic of China, as I have personally experienced it. 6 years ago, when I first set out to accompany my father Ilham Tohti to the US, where he was to take up a position as a visiting scholar at Indiana University in February 2013. I was to stay just for a month, helping my father to settle down for his living arrangements. My father was to stay for a year. My father, Ilham Tohti, is a well-known economist and writer based at Central Minzu University in Beijing, and an advocate for the human rights of the Uyghur people. Although I'm Uyghur, I'm not an academic expert on Xinjiang, nor an expert on Chinese politics, but I have been able to observe the impact and results of repressive Chinese policies as they have been applied to my father, his work, his students, and his family. On February 2nd, 2013, after we arrived at the airport in Beijing and were checking in for our flight to the US, we were pulled out of line and taken away. When a bureaucratic error led to my being given the choice of continuing the boarding process and flying to the US. My father was detained, beaten, questioned, and forbidden from leaving China. What were his crimes? On his website, Uyghur Online, and via other social media, he had written widely about the abuses of basic human rights that are visited on the Uyghur people and that abridge their intellectual and religious freedoms. These policies, and their most egregious, leave them feeling like a people under occupation. 2013 was not the first time my father had been detained by the authorities, nor the first time that he and other members of our family had been subjected to harassment. The government was particularly enraged at the work my father did after serious clashes in Xinjiang in 2009, left many people dead and a significant number disappeared. My father worked to get the names of these people out and to cast a spotlight on the lack of due process, and that was a large part of China's method of repressing Uyghurs' grievances. As a result of this work, my family was removed from their residence and moved around for 1 month. Our phones and computers were confiscated. This became familiar. So many times, I returned home from school without forewarning, found an empty home. My stepmother, my father, and my brothers had been sent to places for weeks. In the fall of 2013, state security personnel rammed my father's car when he was en route to the airport to pick up his mother, my grandma, who was flying to Beijing from Urumqi. When he got out of his car, the state security people told him they would kill everyone in our family. But the worst was what happened on and after January 15, 2013. On that day, 30 to 40 police from different offices came to our house and took my father away in front of my brothers. They were 4 and 7-year-old. Confiscating documents, telephones, computers, and even our family safe. All this was done without any due process or requisite formalities. For days, we had no information about his whereabouts. His lawyer was not allowed any contact with him. Then, on January 25th, the Urumqi Public Security Bureau announced a slew of accusations against him, including inciting separatism and hatred of the country, as well as praising terrorists. Anyone who knows my father realizes how utterly false these charges are. One prominent Chinese intellectual has noted that my father is one of the few Uyghurs intellectuals and descendants who, to his knowledge, does not favor separatism. My father never speaks about separatism. In fact, he's exactly the sort of person a rational Chinese political structure would seek to engage with in order to address the conditions of the Uyghur people. Instead, by arresting my father and threatening him with charges that carry the severest of penalties, it has driven many Uyghurs to a point at which they can't even imagine that their wholly justified grievances can get any sort of a hearing under Chinese rule. Today, we know that my father is being held in the Urumqi First Prison, but no one can visit him since 2017. My father was sentenced to life, and his financial properties were all confiscated. There were some students of my father. I'm proud to say that my father was widely admired by his students, many of whom saw his work as vital and necessary, and now several of them, too, have been arrested and imprisoned for up to 10 to 20 years, with very little known as to their whereabouts. I mention these last facts to give you an idea of the kind of collective punishment that the arrest of descendants entails. But the core matter here is that China has imprisoned a descendant intellectual whose sole crime, in spite of the trumped-up charges that are being thrown around, was simply advocating human rights and equitable treatments for the Uyghur people. Okay, let's say the government thrown all these people into prison because they spoke up for Uyghur people's human rights. So what about the rest of the 1 million Uyghur people? A lot of them, they probably were selling watermelon on the street and then they were taken away to the camps. What are their crimes? The United Nations have reported that more than 1 million people have been held in so-called re-education camp in recent years. According to the very recent report by U.S. intelligence agency, now the number has been increased to up to 3 million people. If back in the years, if the Chinese government had accepted my father's advices, none of the things that is happening now would happen. China's attack on Uyghurs is not counterterrorism, it's simply repression. My father sees oppression of freedom as a problem that needs to be fixed. He's a man who believes that all things can eventually be fixed. He also sees that problems that are not fixed will always lead to a bigger problem. The Chinese treatment of Uyghurs was always causing bigger societal damage. Even before the horrific crackdown, the camps, the ongoing torture of innocent people, China was creating larger, longer-term problems because of the damage they were doing between groups of people. When people are treated and labeled as separate or different, as wrong or bad, human connection cannot happen. My father is a fixer, a bridge builder, a connector. He knows that a better future is one where Han Chinese and Uyghur children are in school together, are friends with one another, and have the same opportunities. His vision is for human connection. For this vision, he worked really, really hard. He worked so hard to improve his English so he could talk to journalists. He started businesses so he could have enough money to help homeless Uyghurs and to help homeless Uyghur children find their parents. He worked non-stop to tell the story of the Uyghur people. My father is a great man and a great scholar. I have one more wish, that we also think today of the hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs who are not free, who are in camps, whose names we do not even know. They are in danger and they need help. This is a problem that still needs to be fixed. Thank you. Many people ask me, how can we help? I used to don't know how to answer those questions because I don't know what way will be the most efficient way or a way that could probably cause less harm to us. But now I know how to answer your question. Please call your senators, please call your representatives. There's a bill going on, we're trying to let it pass. It's called Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act of 2019. If you have a pen, please write it down. It's HR 649. HR 649. It's a House resolution, HR 649. Please, no matter where you're coming from, please call your local representatives, please call your senators, and let them vote. We're 10 votes away to let it pass. Thank you. In order to prevent torturing the translating gentleman, I will be making a speech in Chinese by myself. It's my first speech in public in Chinese, so my Chinese got a little rusty. Please don't mind. 我下面会用中文来，大概因为我们时间很少，我会简短的叙述一下刚刚我做的演讲。我的中文名叫菊尔。我父亲的名字叫伊利哈木图赫提，他曾经是中央民族大学的一名教师，他也是一名经济学家。他 他会很多种语言，他花费了很多年时间去提高自我能力，为了什么呢？不是为了让自己显得很厉害，或者说自己有很多个 degree， 而是为了能帮助更多的人们。他去非常，我们自己的这张脸就是一个 crime， 就是一个罪。那我希望在场所有人都能帮助我们。你们现在任何在场哪怕是有无美国身份，你是否关注现在政治？我请求您，请关注维吾尔人现状，因为我们真的非常需要帮助。这已经不是一个人的问题，不是2个人的问题，而是100万到300万人，甚至不，如果我们放手不管，可能是全维吾尔人民，或者是其他少数民族，也可能会遭殃。真的，大家只有在这个时候，我们团结起来，一起互帮互助，那将来才会有 improve 的可能。请您给你们的 local 的议员打电话，然后呼吁他们签署HR 649这一个法案，这样可以帮到我们。谢谢你们。我的演讲太长了，不好意思。
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for translating. I didn't have to do it myself. I'd like to welcome to speak Leslie Elouet, Hungarian freedom fighter, and the 2006 Visual Artists Guild honoree.
Good afternoon. It is an honor to me to speak after so many heroes that have spoken before me. On the afternoon of October 23, 1956, I was on the bus crossing Margaret Bridge on my way to school in Budapest, the capital city of communist Hungary. I noticed large groups of people going towards Buda. It was 4 o'clock on that unforgettable autumn afternoon. Curious, I joined the marching crowds to Joseph Bam's statue in the park named for him. He was a Polish general of the 1848 Hungarian Revolution. Here we assembled to show solidarity with the Polish unrest of 1956. The first Hungarian flags appeared with a communist symbol cut out. The demonstration of solidarity did evolve into our own demands expressed in a manifesto of 16 points to be broadcast over the radio. From Bern Park, we marched across Margaret Bridge to the Parliament. During this march, I found myself walking side by side with a pretty girl, Eva. We started talking and bonded immediately. Love at first sight. The crowd demanded that the red star on top of the Parliament should be turned off. Instead, all the streetlights went dark. In the darkness, an ocean of burning newspaper lit up the night while we waited, wanting to hear Imre Nagy, Prime Minister during the revolution, address the crowd. Later that night, with the spirit of the revolution in me, I reported on duty at the electric small motor plant next to Bern Park. As a maintenance electrician on duty, I decided to turn the plant's power off to start working at the factory. After locking the room of the power distributor switches, I got rid of the keys. The powerless facility came to a standstill. The strike in place, we all went home in the early morning hours. The next day, I met with Eva again. We joined the marchers while life around us remained so real. By this time, dead bodies were lying across sidewalks, and arm in arm as we strolled along, Eva and I stepped over them. They looked like so many twigs blown out of the trees. We went to the AVO secret police headquarters at Andra Fuel 60, searching for documents and blacklists. Also went to the 8th District Police Station to free prisoners, get arms. Eva decided to go for a few days to her relatives in the country, about 60 kilometers outside of Budapest. A couple of days later, I followed her. I started on foot, but part of the way there I asked Russian drivers of passing military trucks to give me a ride. They obliged with no questions asked. I stayed with Eva at the rural location for 3 days. Neighbors worried that somebody might mistake me for a communist going into hiding, so I returned to Budapest, hitchhiking my way back. A couple of days later, Eva followed me. The 1956 Hungarian Revolution was not all guns and fighting. At some level, life kept on going. Life, love, planning, desperation, and hope. There were beautiful moments and scary times. There were dead bodies seemingly sitting under the trees around the park near the radio station, where the first shots of the revolution were fired into the crowd by the political police. Bodies hanging from trees and bedded down for their everlasting sleep across sidewalks. All over, men were heaping corpses onto trucks. The emotions of that time ran from one extreme to the other. The hatred toward the system converts into the passion, the love for a girl. So many shattered faces, so many broken lives. Was it all worth it? I think it was. With all those inner emotions, conflicts of love and hatred, and all our actions, we did show the world that communism has a limited future, and man's desire for freedom is unsuppressible under any conditions or circumstances. I left Hungary with unexpected urgency as a refugee on November 29, 1956. I never saw Eva again, who left for Germany during the next couple of months to study and become a dentist. After years of retaliation against revolutionaries, 33 years after 1956, the winds of change finally came. It was 1989. Thousands of communist East German tourists were vacationing in Hungary. They demanded to be allowed into They demanded to be allowed into Western Free Europe. In response, the Hungarian government opened the border, and the Berlin Wall came crumbling down on November 9, 1989. The Iron Curtain splitting East and West Europe was rolled up. Finally, the East European captive nations could breathe freely again.
Lynn Hart for her performance. Oh,
thank you. My father escaped from East Germany. So when the Berlin Wall came down, it was a very exciting day for the family, and we could return to Eastern Europe and see family that we hadn't seen or I'd never met. So this is a medley of songs made famous by Marlene Dietrich, who seems to be the epitome of Berlin, and it sings about Berlin.
Wenn mich
Los Angeles-based sculptor and jewelry designer Charles Sherman was born in Atlantic City. His most notable work is in the city of Beverly Hills, on the front of the City Department of Public Works, the monumental ceramic sculpture, Love Letter. In 1989, he assisted sculptor Tom Van Sant in his Goddess of Democracy project in downtown Los Angeles. His philosophies in art and life are the same: promote the positive. For his continuous contribution to the right of freedom of expression, the Visual Artists Guild presents him with the Spirit of Tiananmen Day.
Speech, except that I just want to thank Ann Lau because when we put up the statue of the Goddess of Democracy, Ann Lau just came up and she said that there's no Asians, you're all Anglos, and we didn't even think that there weren't any Asians. We just put up the Goddess of Democracy because it was the right thing to do. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome Diana Wong, an accomplished international artist. She founded Merging One Gallery, which ran in Santa Monica from 1986 to 1990. In 1989, Diana initiated the first Art and Democracy-themed art exhibition. She subsequently volunteered to curate Art and Democracy 2, 3, and 5 for the Visual Artists Guild. For her continuous contributions to the right of freedom of speech, the Visual Artists Guild presents her with the Spirit of Tiananmen Award.
this may be the last one. Is that right?
Well, the thing is, I'm getting old, and I don't know how many years I can last doing this. So we need to appreciate what time we have left, and I hope to pass on this visual artist guild to someone else.
Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Ken Aaron has continuously led in several social betterment activities. He has led in human rights, locally with the ACLU, and on the board of KPFK, among other organizations, and as president of the Visual Artists Guild for 11 years. As president of the Visual Arts Guild, Ken participated in many human rights actions for his continued contributions to supporting human rights and human rights activists internationally. The Visual Artists Guild presents Ken Aaron with the Spirit of Tiananmen Award.
You might be wondering why so many people volunteer to work for this star over here. It's Charlie told us. She just asks you to do the right thing. So you do what the right thing is to do. That's all. So when you get a task like, let's get this guy out of detention, let's get these people liberated, let's point out some atrocities that should be corrected, how could you say no? She just guides us along the right way, asking us to do the right thing. Thank you, Anne.
Jeff Widner, who was up here speaking earlier. We'd also like to recognize him for his very significant contributions to human rights internationally. The Visual Artists Guild presents Jeff with the Spirit of Tiananmen Award also.
Not sure if I got my voice back a little bit, but yeah, this is really cool. I mean, when I was in school, I was like the Charlie Brown who was dropping the ball. I was always worried about screwing something up. Well, it's one of the few times I haven't. I got something recognition that turned out right. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Jur, would you also come up on behalf of your father, Ilham Tohti? Ilham Tohti has made many compassionate sacrifices for the Uyghur people, and for that, we'd like to present him with the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award.
Thank you very much. I wish my father could be here but himself to accept this award, and also wish awards like this could be unnecessary one day, because that would mean everybody's free to think, free to speak, and free to worship as they please. Thank you.
We'd also like to welcome Tenzin Chodon back to the stage. And for representative of the Tibetan Association of California, Southern California, For their contribution to the Tibetan people and the promotion of nonviolent human rights agendas, we would like to present the Tibetan Association of Southern California with the Champion for Freedom of Speech Award.
And everyone here, we certainly are humbled. You've been the champion for freedom of speech and expression for the last 30 years that I've known you. And all of you that have supported. Again, we must keep Anne's legacy and vision alive. And it is our duty, especially in knowing so many heroes, courageous activists, gentlemen students who died, and of course all of you that have supported their dream. And for the 1.3 billion Chinese, the 11 million Uyghurs, and the 6 million Tibetans, we have to commit ourselves to make everyone free. Thank you, Anne. On behalf of the Tibetan Association of Community.
Lastly, but not least, definitely, Zhou Fengzhou, co-founder and current president of Humanitarian China. Please come up. We'd like to recognize you for your contributions and sacrifices for human rights in China. We would like to present Zhou with the Champion for Freedom of Speech Award.
Thank you. It's such an honor. It's our first recognition from you. It means a lot to us. That's why I came all the way. Yesterday I was in Taiwan, and tomorrow I'll be back to New York City. But, thank you. And just like the fall of Berlin Wall reminded us. History is on our side. Freedom and democracy will come to China. Thank you.
Pardon me, this is not in the script. Could we all have a hand for Anne?